I want to take a moment just to kind of to pick your brain on what started, Dodge Bomb. Is Dodge Bomb actually the first thing you've attempted to write, or have you tried writing other books?
This is my first book.
Oh, cool.
I've written short stories and a lot of cynical anecdotes. As you remember, when we were at school, I wrote a funny bathroom newsletter, duck droppers, But this is really my first formal work, I would say, I've ever done.
Okay, interesting. And so when did you first decide, I think I should write Dodge Bomb? Like when did that take place roughly?
I think so. 2014, I was pretty much done with the Army and was starting to mentally sort of wrap my head around what was next. And it was, as you know, it was just difficult. So I just, as a venting mechanism, just started to write down little vignettes of here's what was stupid today with the Army bureaucracy or whatever, some humorous, some terrible. And then once I got out of the Army in 2015, and I was like, okay, the next step is business school and pursuing that, I really realized that I wanted to write a book to talk about my experiences and also relate those war experiences to just sort of average Americans. Because I had started writing these things down, but then I realized when I got to business school and just started talking to, average Americans who hadn't, ever been in the military or any connections, there was this just huge disconnect for what military service was and what deployments overseas was. So that was then kind of the real genesis and driving force that, okay, I'm going to write this book. I'm going to use it on the backdrop of my first tour in Iraq, because I think that's what's interesting and how I can best, tell the story. And then I'm going to put it in a relatable, approach so that anyone, whether former military such as ourselves or a civilian, can read it, enjoy it, and understand this, epic event in American history. And that was the whole start, I guess, really of it, from scribbling down little frustrations with some field grade to, I'm going to start this project, and whatever it looks like, I'm going to finish it.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. And then did you leverage any type of resources, any books that kind of help you put this together? What was your go-to resource if you had any?
Oh, well, first off, and as you know from just our military network, is reach out to other military writers, because you would be surprised, or you wouldn't be, just how much, if you ask somebody in the military who's done something before, whether it's writing a resume or writing a book, they're going to be upfront, share you pros, cons, everything they've learned. So I reached out to a couple of veterans who had written books and been sort of successful, and they gave me all their best practices. I also looked, I like to read, and I actually read a lot of, war books. And that's also too kind of the genesis of this, because I felt the current sort of Iraq and Afghanistan stories out there didn't fully capture the experience that we went through.
Right.
And I looked more heavily into World War II books, to be perfectly honest. Like Kurt Vonnegut, Slaughterhouse Five, Norman Mailer, The Naked and the Dead. I thought these were just beautiful, tragic, and compelling books that talked about the World War II experience. Why couldn't we have something for Iraq and Afghanistan along those lines? And then I sort of started writing and used the authors and those books as the initial sort of model for where I wanted the book to go.
Yeah, that's interesting, because one of the things I've learned along the way is, and that's because I'm trying to get into writing as well and do my own thing. Just, I'm not sure if I share this with you, but or for those who are listening, watching, when I got out of the Army, I wanted to pursue a creative career. I still very much want to do that, and I'm doing it on my own in a way. But one of the things I did along the way was I was a writing intern over Walt Disney Studios for about 6 months, which was pretty fun. And in the process of trying to get in there, because I want to be a filmmaker, still do. But one of the things I learned along the way was, after reading a whole bunch of books, is that Hollywood, for example, they want the same but different in a lot of ways, and that's essentially what you have done in this particular instance, where you're leveraging books like you said, like Kurt Vonnegut, and putting those together, where it's okay. Let me look at and see what Kurt did, and let me try to see if I can make sense of it from where I'm sitting right here. So that's really cool. Okay. Yeah. Anything else to add that?
Well, yeah. So, and this is a complex question, so we can probably go back and forth for a while though.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Well, something else that I've noticed with the genre of Iraq or Afghanistan is that it's mostly Hollywood cliches, right?
Yep.
There's very few good books or movies that capture the experience. It's all, everyone was a Navy SEAL, sniper, has crazy PTSD, and like you, I mean, I've picked up plenty of books and started watching plenty of movies. And at first you're like, and then you're like, oh, this is terrible.
Yeah.
And so after and then again, when you talk to people about like why the Hurt Locker sucks, and it's just not realistic. Because, at some point he just becomes special forces for no reason,
Yeah.
And again, civilians, they don't get that. They think we're all, and that's awesome, but they think we're all these Green Berets running around doing crazy stuff. And the actual story is a bunch of, regular guys going through complex situations, doing mundane, but also sometimes very scary, crazy things.
Right.
And that's the story I wanted to tell and change the kind of the current narrative that everyone's PTSD, sniper who just can't handle his stuff after he gets home from killing thousands of jihadists.
Yeah, it's funny because like all the mundane stuff, even one of the things that made me laugh as I was reading Dodgebomb was just seeing the mention of Vienna sausages. I was like, it just made me smile. I will say I'm a little disappointed I didn't see anything about Rippets or like wild tigers or
so
unless I missed it.
There is a quick reference to Rippets in the beginning, where before a patrol brief, the one NCO says, "You can't drink a Mountain Dew, you can't drink a Rippet.
Yeah,
you have to drink water." Yeah. But and that's awesome too that you say that, because hearing other veterans when they read my book, there'll be certain little moments that trigger things.
Yeah.
And one of those was like Rippets, where a buddy was just like, "Oh man, did you ever do like a Rippet challenge?" And I was just like, "Yes, I did do a Rippet challenge. Just give me a Rippet so I can drink." And just these like little moments that it like brings out that we all had.
And then and what's really good about that, and I think you capture this in the book too, which I think is really neat, just being able to take moments to connect with soldiers on a very human level, which you don't really get. I mean, that's something that's also seems to be missing from the main narrative, mainstream narrative, as far as like the boring moments. So, for example, like watching soldiers play Grand Theft Auto, for example, and then just all the sound bites that you catch while you watch them play, right? Which can be very entertaining, because soldiers are like, I always tell people this, like soldiers are some of the funniest people on the planet. What the things that they just ad lib in the moments, it just hysterical. Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and that's some of the anecdotes, and that's also some of the humor I tried to capture in the book, because I find most war novels, they take themselves so seriously, and we know obviously war can be a very serious thing, but it's people going through this, and to maintain their sanity, they want to crack jokes about Grand Theft Auto, or quote movie quotes, or talk about whatever. And that absurdity, I feel, is often lost in other books, because it's just like, no, we were Navy SEALs once and awesome. End of story.
Right. Yeah, and I think what's also really interesting about what you've done too, I think the only ever time I've seen this was, I think when we read at the Academy, Army at Dawn, by, it was a Rick Atkinson, if I remember correctly, and where they highlighted the politics between like generals, for example, like Patton and Eisenhower didn't necessarily get along very well. Whereas, but in your book, again, like, falling back on Lieutenant Gutierrez, like just the politics that took place where, getting mad at Captain Holt, for example, for, going too early. It's like, no, you should have done it at this time, where it's just all the absurdity that the absurdity behind, those type of interactions, which come out, which really, it creates a lot of cynicism. So I'd love to hear more about that, by the way. Just like
Yeah.
with regards to cynicism, like what do you think? Do you think that's something that just people really would help better understand what the Army is all about in general?
Yeah, I mean, well, the Army is the largest corporation in America and a huge government bureaucracy, right? So there's this absurdism, and there's also this bureaucratic, norm of just making things so difficult sometimes to get
Right.
done, and also the fact that it's government and not private. Sometimes metrics are just based off of phantasms, right, and not like money or anything sort of quantifiable. So that's where you often sometimes get into absurdities in the military, where it's, we took the town, we killed the bad guys. Yes, but we didn't do it according to the brigade top 15, fighting points, and you're like, why does that matter?
Yeah.
But you see people get so sort of indoctrinated or just into that own little world that they can't think past then anymore what matters, because they become a careerist, they become a bureaucrat, and that, and I wanted to capture some of that absurdity and sometimes cynicism in the book, because although this book is about, the early fight in Iraq before the bureaucracy sort of took over, that's what I found towards the end, right? And that second deployment to Iraq, or later in my Army career, is that it wasn't so much anymore about results or war fighting or how well you can shoot your weapons anymore or do any of this like classic Army stuff. It was all just, how good can I look to the brigade commander? How much property have I turned in? How good are we for resiliency and other just impossible to gauge metrics that then these later field grades base their careers upon.
Right.